Something extraordinary happened in Congress. Senator Whitehouse caught the Attorney General and the FBI Director in what he says are flat-out false statements. And today he exposed the receipts. If you think accountability still matters in America, you need to hear this.
Here's the second thing, and this goes back to the ranking member's comments about yesterday. To me, yesterday was an awful day in the history of this committee. It set new low after new low after new low. And I'm not going to talk about all of the new lows. I'm going to talk about one in particular. And that is whether anybody noticed the irony that the day before the United States Department of Justice arraigned a former FBI director for allegedly making untruthful statements to this committee, the Attorney General of the United States sat right there and made untruthful statements to this committee. And they weren't maybe untruthful statements. This wasn't a question of nuance. She made allegations about the ranking member and me having received political contributions from some, she said, Epstein close confidant. Well, guess what? That's actually checkable. There's a thing called the Federal Election Commission. The Federal Election Commission keeps a website that tracks all of our contributions. An intern at the Department of Justice could have checked to see that the allegation, I'll leave it to myself, that I had received campaign contributions from this individual, that was false. And it's not a maybe answer, it's a yes or no. Did I or didn't I? And there's an unimpeachable record that shows that what she said sitting right there was not true. If we are going to care about untruthful statements made by the Department of Justice and the FBI in this committee, let's not have this be yet another area where there are different rules for one party than for the other party. And just by the way, on that very subject, the other thing that the Attorney General did sitting right there was to strip all cover away from the untruthful statements that had been made to this committee by the current FBI director. You all heard him here. He said that he couldn't tell us about his grand jury testimony in the Mar-a-Lago case, where he first pled the Fifth, then got immunity, and then testified. He couldn't tell us what he testified to, he said, because the Department of Justice had sealed the testimony and because there was a court order barring him from doing that. And he actually identified which judge, the chief judge of the D.C. Federal District Court. Well, guess what? We know that since then, the chief judge of the Federal District Court has said that that was not true. He said specifically nothing prevented Director Patel from discussing his grand jury testimony. And yesterday, the Attorney General had the chance to say, you're right. We did seal the testimony in that matter. The Department of Justice did seal the testimony, and Patel's statement was true. Not about the court order, but at least it was sealed by the Department of Justice. She didn't say that. So now both his testimony that the DOJ had sealed his testimony and his testimony there was a court order barring his testimony are kind of demonstrably false statements to this committee. And then when he came back and we challenged him on those false statements, his second false statement was to say, I'm not going to answer any of those questions because my transcript of the grand jury testimony, I've worked with the DOJ to see that it is publicly released. Well, it either has been publicly released or it hasn't. It's a very simple distinction, yes or no. And we all know that it has not, in fact, been publicly released. And when we asked about that from the Attorney General, again, she left him high and dry and refused to say that anything had been publicly released, that there was any publicly released transcript. So yesterday stands in really stark contrast. I should say the day before yesterday stands in really stark contrast to yesterday. Yesterday, an FBI director was arraigned for making a false statement. The day before that, the Attorney General of the United States made arguably even falser statements We'll see how the other case turns out. And she left the current FBI director completely exposed on his multiple false statements that his grand jury testimony in the Mar-a-Lago case had been sealed by the department, was under court order not to be released, and had since been publicly released as a transcript. I don't know if this committee is going to take itself seriously enough to treat false statements to this committee as serious matters, irrespective of who made them. But the contrast is really stark. Thank you, Chairman.
What unfolded in that hearing?
What happened in that hearing wasn't drama. It wasn't politics as usual. It was a real test of whether the basic rules that hold a republic together still matter. Senator Whitehouse didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Instead, he walked the committee, and the entire country, step by step through a chain of facts that revealed one hard truth: when people at the top of our justice system make false claims and face no consequences, the whole idea of accountability begins to collapse. He started with something simple. The Attorney General, a person sworn to uphold the law, gave statements to Congress that the public record shows were false. Whitehouse pointed directly to Federal Election Commission documents, records anyone can check. He said even an intern at the DOJ could have verified those details in minutes. And that matters. Some things in government are up for interpretation, but some things are just facts. If a top official gets those wrong in a sworn hearing, it's not a tiny mistake. It shakes public trust. Then came the next layer, the FBI director's grand jury testimony. Patel told the committee he couldn't talk about what he had said under oath because he claimed a court order prevented him. That is a huge allegation. It implies the judiciary had blocked him from speaking. But then the chief judge publicly stated that no such restriction existed. Under the rules, witnesses are allowed to talk about their own testimony. That means the claim of being legally gagged was not accurate, and maybe worse, it might have been used as an excuse to avoid answering hard questions. Why does this matter beyond the headlines? Because institutions only work when everyone agrees on the same basic facts. Grand jury secrecy exists to protect investigations and witnesses, but Rule 6E has clear exceptions. When an official suggests they were blocked by law, and a judge later says that wasn't true, it turns technical rules into a shield for hiding the truth. That's damaging. It teaches the public to accept spin instead of clarity, and to accept evasions as normal. And the damage isn't just abstract. Trust is the currency that keeps law enforcement functioning. If career agents, partner agencies, and ordinary citizens can't trust what DOJ leaders say under oath, cooperation weakens. Sources hesitate. Cases stall. A single falsehood from a senior official doesn't just create bad optics, it makes the entire system less effective, less fair, and less safe for everyone. Whitehouse also repeated a simple principle: the truth should not change based on who is speaking. If one person is prosecuted for lying to Congress but another is excused because of status or political power, then the rule of law becomes conditional. And when the rule of law becomes conditional, accountability becomes optional. That is how strong institutions begin to rot. So what can actually fix this? Oversight. Real oversight. Committees can subpoena documents, demand unredacted records, call witnesses back under oath, and send cases to inspectors general. And if there is evidence that false statements were made intentionally, that becomes a matter for criminal referral. These processes are slow on purpose, they protect due process, but they exist to protect the truth, not simply to punish. For anyone watching from the outside, this hearing is a reminder of how democratic self-correction starts. Not with shouting. Not with viral moments. But with facts. Whitehouse laid out exactly where public statements didn't match public documents. He showed where claims of legal restrictions fell apart when checked. That isn't grandstanding. That is the slow, necessary work of restoring norms. And there's a human side that people often ignore. Every time an official bends the truth, real people suffer. Whistleblowers who might want to speak up stay silent. Victims waiting for justice wait even longer. Career professionals who believe in fairness feel betrayed. Communities lose confidence that federal law enforcement is impartial and honest. These are the real consequences when leaders choose convenience over truth. So what can you do? First, treat this story as more than a clip. Look at the records Whitehouse mentioned: FEC filings, court statements, the judge's remarks. Hold your elected officials to those facts. Support independent oversight, full document transparency, Inspector General investigations, and, when justified, legal referrals. Support journalism that studies documents and timelines, not just quick sound bites. And most importantly, don't normalize excuses. Don't accept evasions as normal. Truth is not a luxury. It's the foundation of shared government. If you believe in institutions that serve the law rather than the powerful, then stay engaged. Keep watching. Keep asking questions. Oversight only works when the public pays attention and demands the same rules for everyone. Share this video. Stay informed.